Minutes till the start of the special meeting. Please, council members, make your way to the stage and sit at the dais. 4 minutes to the start of our 9 p.m. special meeting.
Hello? Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. Good evening. The time is now 9:01, and I will call the Cibolo City Council special meeting for Monday, August 17th, 2026, 9 p.m. to order. We have Mr. Councilman Randy Roberts has sent in a notification that he would not be here tonight due to another commitment. Do I have a motion to excuse?
I make a motion to excuse.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes 6-0. We will move on to citizens to be heard. This is the only time during the council meeting, a special council meeting, that a citizen can address the city council. It is an opportunity for visitors and guests to address the city council on any issue to include agenda items. All visitors wishing to speak must fill out the sign-in roster prior to the start of the meeting. City council may not deliberate any non-agenda issue, nor may any action be taken on any non-agenda issue at this time. However, city council may present any factual response to items brought up by citizens. All remarks, limit of 3 minutes each. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a body. Remarks may be addressed to any individual member of the council, so long as the remarks are, one, about matters of local public concern and not disruptive to the meeting or threatening to to the member or any attendee, including the staff. Any person violating this policy may be requested to leave the meeting, but no person may be requested to leave or forced to leave the meeting because of the viewpoint expressed. Citizens who want to submit written comments to be read during the citizen comment portion of the city council meeting should include their name, address, and reason why they are unable to attend the meeting at which they want their comments read. Comments must be submitted to the city secretary at citySecretary@cibolotx.gov no later than 2 p.m. prior to the city council meeting. All comments received that include the required information will be provided to the mayor and council and may be summarized or read at the meeting at the discretion of the presiding officer. I will begin the citizens to be heard with an email from Brianna Kylie. My name is Kylie Gee. I live at Tree Branch, Shirts, Texas, and I cannot attend the meeting because I just came back from an international trip where I got a virus. Below is my written remarks. Good afternoon. To ensure our community can still live peacefully, I propose these noise regulations for the new data center being built. 1. Within 250 feet of residential, require a 72-hour pre-development ambient noise study measured at the property line. 2. Establish maximum sound levels not to exceed 5 dBA above the pre-development ambient noise. 3. Require mitigation measures if maximum sound levels are exceeded at owner-operator's expense. 4. Restrict standby generator testing schedules to weekdays between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Exempt emergency operations TCEQ regulated. Require closed-loop cooling systems and the use of reclaimed water for cooling. All very good suggestions. Okay. Now will we move on to the people who have signed up? I would like to call to the microphone Jared Stoffel. Good evening, Jared. Thank you for coming. Go ahead and go to the microphone thank you.
I was curious. The Bolton Road itself is the city of Cibolo's jurisdiction, if I understand correctly. And recently in our scale, I guess, the ASIN plant went down there, and the roads have gotten really torn up, and there doesn't seem to be any attempt to address that. And I'm concerned about the additional loads from this coming through there. And I'm also curious about the enforceability on that property for sound and things of that nature, because we've asked the police to come out a couple different times for speeders on the road, and there doesn't seem to be a concerted effort to address those concerns. Our kid's bus almost got hit from speeders, and we can't get anybody to come out during drop off right around 3:45 p.m. And just generally, it seems like out of sight, out of mind. You're over there. We're not too worried about it. And I just want to bring it to your attention because I hope that's something y'all can rectify while you're going through this process in a thoughtful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma, can you give him my card too? Thank you. Melissa Markham. Good evening and thank you for coming.
Good evening. I spoke earlier, so I don't need to go into detail. I did notice that as several of the community members were speaking, several of the council members were nodding along in agreement. So that gives me some small bit of confidence that y'all will fight for the things that we were speaking about. I know that you're limited as to what you can do. The city manager was very evident about that it's within city limits. And I think I pointed out that we know that data centers are moving outside the city limits to avoid those regulations. So whatever it is, air pollution, noise pollution, light pollution, all those things that do affect, that travel beyond those made up imaginary border lines, we can control, that would be much appreciated. I'm holding the person, Rick Vasquez, responsible. So again, I wonder why he wasn't here at this meeting to answer to the constituents as to why he signed off on this and why he had sole discretion to do it. That is a question that I would like to understand. I would also, was he paid? Did he sign an NDA? What went in behind this? Just because we know what goes on in other communities and what happens. I am a business owner here in Cibolo. I own 2 small businesses. I know I don't get any of the tax breaks that these major corporations do. I know that I have solar panels on my house because my electric bills have been going up year over year. So some of these questions aren't for y'all. They're for the gentlemen that have probably already left because they're done. They did their spiel. But for the community, I think Cibolo has far outgrown at a pace that it cannot accommodate. 1103 is widely evident of that, and from my understanding, even right now, the city of Cibolo and TxDOT aren't operating off of the same plans. So I think that city council members, the residents often get left out of a lot of details when it comes to either these people that are building, TxDOT that's doing it, TECQ, look at what they're doing around Scenic Loop and how they've left those residents holding the bag with polluted water. So there's a lot of the state regulations that don't exist that we can't rely on. So we need our city council to fight for us. Thank you.
Mrs. Markham, on the video that Marissa talked about, it answers a lot of the questions within our governing documents called the Unified Development Code as to those questions. And also one of the things that I've learned is that government has siloed itself into being so unproductive for the people who it represents. We are not exempt from that. Communication is often considered the modern miracle when we get it right. We have to work at doing better. Geneva Kitts, good evening and welcome, and thank you for coming or staying.
Good evening. I'm Genevieve Kitts. I was born and raised here. I have 2 degrees in public health, so I am interested to see what the implications are long term. But as you know, Hays County adopted a resolution, and San Marcos, the city, is right behind them in banning data centers. But referring to Hays County's resolution, they have some overlying objectives that I think would be helpful to provide guidance and direction tonight, and so I'm going to read them out. Daily and peak water demands, cooling system specifications, power grid impact studies, large capacity on-site sewage system designs, stormwater runoff and flooding models, air emissions and off-grid energy, potential pollutants in a spill, the traffic impact, noise and light pollution controls, site plans and future expansion layouts, on-site physical signage, formal media announcements, and public disclosure of monetary contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is all I have. Okay, moving, before we get into the body of the goal, councils, I'm going to go, I'm hoping that you went through all the documentation that was sent to you. I'm going to go left to right for any additional information. Before we adjourn, I am going to want to also get consensus from the council to give direction to schedule a joint meeting between the planning and zoning, the city council, the economic development corporation, and our long-term SAT Unified Development Code board as well. So, moving on to 4, discussion action, discussion direction to develop regulations and definitions related to data centers in the municipal code and the Unified Development Code. I'm going to give Councilman McLaughlin just a few minutes. Is there any, in the documentation that you received, is there anything that you'd like to add to that documentation?
Thank you, Mayor. Not necessarily staff are the concerns. We're all tracking the concerns. I know we can look at what we can do in our legal capacity to alleviate those concerns. My question, and I apologize, I didn't get with staff on this earlier. I really want to look at whatever regulations we decide to put in place, what the second and third order effects are for other development, not necessarily data centers, but other development, especially that entire area. Majority of that area is zone light industrial. Because we want to look at either how we can limit, prevent, regulate within our capacity to alleviate concerns, but this potentially can have a domino effect if you overregulate for other type of development. So whatever it is we decide to push forward and adapt, I just want to be able to look and see what the second and third order effects are for other types of development in the area.
Thank you. Councilwoman Patterson?
There we go. Okay. I think very similar in what I've asked for, and I know I've spoken with Mr. Reed about this, is understanding what those second and third order effects and really making sure that we're looking at this from a risk mitigation standpoint. What are the potential setbacks for the residents with the regulations that we're looking to put in place? Like, how are we protecting them in that area, and also the greater Cibolo to prevent this from happening again? And even taking into consideration not only the noise from the data center, but the noise from other things such as backup generators that they're going to have. Like, some of those things we need to make sure that we are looking into and regulating and putting some processes in place.
Councilwoman Cunningham?
I think if it angles towards you, start getting you back to that. Well, first, resources are finite, so I want to make sure that we're including that there needs to be some kind of renewable or reusable resources in these systems. We keep hearing, what are they calling it? Closed loop? That means nothing to me. There's closed loop that are truly closed that don't use a lot of water. There's closed loop that once it gets past a certain degree temp, they have to pull it down with water. There's closed loop that have to be emptied out. That means nothing to us. So I don't know that we need to be going into that much detail about closed loop systems in our code, but requiring renewable energy when we can. When that comes to reused water, reclaimed water, renewable energy when possible. People deserve peace. So noise and light pollution. Noise pollution isn't just loud noises, it's constant noise, it's humming, it's buzzing, it's that feedback we have from the speaker the entire town hall. That's very irritating 24/7, it's irritating for an hour. That people deserve to be able to enjoy their peace. So I want to make sure that when we're looking at the UDC, we're also looking at the sections on noise. Because we had that noise ordinance 2-3 years ago, that would need to be updated to deal with industrial noise. Health implications, I'm very concerned about groundwater. I know that there was discussions about TCEQ being involved in this project and having a water facility on site that had to be TCEQ approved and having a TCEQ licensed person there. Just because you have a licensed person there and it passes the initial licensing does not mean that it's maintained, and it does not prevent every spill or every accident. Almost every single person down there is on well water. Those wells are shallow, they're 20 to 40 feet, most of them. You get that in the water, it spreads, not just in the aquifers like one of the speakers said earlier and in the limestone, but it spreads into people's actual drinking water and things that go into their home. It goes into the water that goes to animals. That's very concerning. I want to make sure that we have something there. We are not the water utility provider, but we can work with the water utility provider to make sure that our residents are protected by that too. I liked some of the comments that were made by residents who spoke just now. I had a whole bunch of notes, so I'm sorry this is not super organized. But the ambient noise study, pre-development, I would like to see those studies. I'm not sure if those have already been done or if that was a requirement of the approval process, but the ambient noise study, the light study, the daily and peak water demands, the stormwater runoff, what we are right now, what we will be afterwards, the noise, light, and traffic impact. All of that is very important to know before and after, because once it's there, people can make up what it was before. If you don't have the data, there's nothing to compare it to. There's no baseline. And one of the speakers mentioned ETJ, and I know, Mayor, we've had a lot of discussions about residential development in the ETJ, but I think that may be something we need to address as much as possible in our code. I know we are very limited to what we can do with ETJ development in our code, but that would be a conversation that we may want to, if we can't put it in ours, get with the county and see how we can balance that, because we've seen a lot of that. They come right on our city lines. And then about the documents that we were given specifically, there is a page in here called the specific use permit zoning and limited use zoning. And it shows it's proposing that sub is required for following data center types: hyperscale data center 75 megawatts or greater, and then limited use permitted data.
Can you show me the page, like, sorry? Okay, let me look at that.
It's like right after
Page 2, 3,
it's
so we
right
can know
after
what
the
you're
memo.
oh, right after the memo. Okay. She's talking about the page that starts out specific use permit right after the memo.
Yes. So on this one, it's proposing that hyperscale data centers, 75 megawatts or greater, would require a special use or specific use permit. And then it proposes limited use permitted data centers for 75, I'm guessing it means megawatts, but it says MG or less. I think that means MW. I'm concerned about that. Limited use permitted data center, does that mean that it would be approved by right? Or would that still require a sub or cup?
Well, I mean, I think that's what's up before the council.
Okay. I didn't know what was in this actual proposal though, because the first section where it talks about 75 megawatts or greater, it does say sub required for these types. And then it goes down to limited use permitted data centers and limited use standards. I would recommend we have all data centers come to us and go through the cup or sub process. Yes.
And that draft was prepared for the Planning and Zoning Commission to start the process. And after the draft was developed, we learned that the council was going to kick off the process and then send a recommendation down to the Planning and Zoning Commission. But the limited use proposal was that the data centers would meet all the standards that we would outline, and then it would be permitted as a limited use. And that tracks Senate Bill 6, which was recently passed, that state requires higher levels of analysis of 75 megawatts or greater, and then under 75 megawatts, the state doesn't have the same criteria.
Yeah, so my recommendation is still going to be a cup or sub for both, because we are a small city. We are growing, we are limited resources, we are limited space, we are limited on a lot of things. We are growing, we are scrappy, we do what we can with what we have, and we're doing a decent job. But with data centers, these are new, and I don't think that we are ready to give free rein to anything that's below 75 megawatts. We don't have that. The other questions I have are more utility company related, and that may be part of our joint meeting that you've mentioned. This is 50 megawatt data center. We have limited amounts of electricity available to us based off of what GDEC has said. Now maybe they misinterpreted what we said, like they supposedly misinterpreted what we said when we were asking about data centers. But we need to know, because we are active. We have a very active economic development corporation. We have a very active economic development staff. We have a very active chamber that advocates for us. And we are trying our hardest to get businesses to come into Cibolo to help offset our property taxes. The way you offset property taxes is by sales tax. And if we allow these data centers to come in and the utility companies freely authorize this, amount of electricity usage, is there going to be any left for these businesses that we're working our heinies off to get? And so I want to see if that can be added to maybe the agenda with the work session, how we can work together on that. I don't know that there's a place that we can really put that in our UDC, but that is one of the main reasons why I'm recommending having any type of data center that's proposed, any type of hyperscale, whatever we want to call it, any data center would go through the cup or sup process, because that would allow us the chance to pause and reach out to those entities to have those conversations and have a better idea of the impact of those specific centers.
Interrupt you just for a minute. Mr. Reed, what Katie is asking for, I believe could be facilitated in having, Mr. Shower or one of his associates come before the council, like a strategic partner, plan. We could, have a series, once we have a date, we could then ask council to please send in, the kinds of questions that they feel that they would be wanting answers to, specifically around this issue of, I have some more issues around this, aside from just around data centers. I have it for the development of our economic development along the I-10 corridor and what that's going to look like. And so I think if you could get with Darren, pick a date for a strategic partner meeting, and then provide that to council to give the questions. Katie, would that meet your, yeah? I
Yes,
think
is the
everybody
answer.
would.
We'll do that.
And then the feedback's terrible. Another question in relation to the utilities, Mr. Reed, for that meeting would be, are they planning on having a separate cost or isolated rate class for these types of businesses that are higher usage than typical standard businesses?
Councilwoman Sanchez Stevens. Hopefully you don't get.
Yeah, hopefully I don't either. Yes, so I agree with Ms. Cunningham regarding all data centers coming before council, because not all data centers are created equal. And the use of utilities are going to be extremely different just as well. So I feel that a cup would be very cautious in when data centers decide to come into the city. I also noticed that within generator testing limited between 8 to 5 p.m., I feel like there should also be limits to how long they should be testing those generators just as well. Typically 3 minutes at minimum, 5 minutes at maximum. I know that we had a lot of discussion regarding the noise that the generators and the data facilities cause, but also we didn't really discuss the low frequencies that really generate for miles. And I feel that we can create good legislation regarding construction standards. Maybe that we could implement some inertia basis, some ground substructure, something where that low frequency is captured there on site before it permeates out. We should also consider increasing the property setback line, so that as these particular data centers fill the occupied acreage that they have applied for, when even developments such as residential tend to come in behind them, whether that's in the ETJ or within the city, that we have adequate amount of setback lines to protect that development that's coming in. So I would like to make more recommendations, if you wouldn't mind. I guess the city staff, I'll continue to submit more in regards to low frequency legislation. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
All right. I think that I agree with everything you all have said prior, but I still have a couple questions. The power that we have is in our UDC in this current situation, because we can't change what happened prior to us being here, or we can only change the future. Am I correct? So, and the way that we do that is through our tools like the UDC. Since the end of July, I've been sending questions to the staff, having them answer specific questions that residents have been giving me and things like that. And I'm going to ask you to share that with the council before they, possibly tonight. That way they don't ask a question that has already been asked and the answer is there already. So if you could do that for me. And I think one of the most important things that we need to do is kind of answer the people. what happens during periods of drought or mandatory water restrictions? What protections exist in our current structure that will protect them? So I think that questions like that we need to be asking you all or we need to be considering as we write legislation. Also, uh, does it, the whatever we put in place requires applicants to disclose electrical demand. Does it always also require evidence that our existing electric infrastructure can be reliably support the project without negatively affecting our current residents and businesses? I think that's an important question. So basically what I'm saying without drawing this out is our residents have addressed their concerns, and we heard many of those tonight. We need to be able to answer that through legislation, and it needs to be clear and precise.
Before we move on to Councilwoman Roberts, I just want to tell you a story about doo-doo. Okay? It's a true story. They built a whole subdivision and everybody's toilets flushed into the sewer system in the streets that were all capped off. And then they came and sucked the doo-doo out with the doo-doo vacuum cleaner. And that was how, what we call pump and haul. And the state through TCEQ, and to your point about drought, and to everybody's basic eyebrow raising, hair on fire kind of concern, is that TCEQ had no definition for temporary in terms of doo-doo. And so what that meant was that as that subdivision grew and grew and grew, more and more and more doo-doo was pumped out and driven on the streets where your children play, exposing. So to ask these questions about drought, to ask these questions about the power grid, to ask these questions has to be a state level awareness, because nobody would help the city of Cibolo with the doo-doo issue. Okay, I try to make it a little funny, but it's not funny if it's driving past your house twice a week and your kids are out there, because things get flushed. And so we need this conversation, and a lot of what we're getting backlash on is because it is so siloed and we are so taken away. So drought, and it's insane the amount of siloing that's going on. I apologize, Councilwoman Roberts, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I am kind of along the same lines as Councilwoman Cunningham and Ms. Patterson said. And I do also like Ms. Sanchez-Stevens' idea regarding the setback lines. I think that's a great idea to push those back, because that does help to eliminate some of the surrounding areas. But one of the biggest questions that I do have is, being that this potential data center could possibly expand, whatever we're attempting to put in place right now, would that affect the expansion? So that would, I'm sorry? Yeah, so I mean, that's something I think is very important, that on this particular one, since we didn't get a choice in it, we need to make sure that if it does want to expand, that the council does have some abilities to regulate it better. And also, in regards to, I think every data center I kind of think everything should kind of come in front of council, because we were all surprised about this, just like the residents were. Because we were all told that we didn't have the availability in water, we didn't have availability in electric. So all of a sudden we see it on Facebook too. So communication has to be better. So definitely the cups and the sups need to be done. The renewable sources need to be a priority as well, because, I mean, no matter if it's closed loop or not, it's still going to evaporate water somehow. And you're going to continue using more water probably than what you're asking for. And I mean, and where it says limited use permit data centers and limited use standards, where it says data center 75 mgs or less, I mean, I think that needs to be even lower. Because, I mean, here we're allowing a 50 megawatt to come in and we have no say in what's going on. So why are we not going to lower that to where, again, we're bringing it in front of us, but we have some say because it's a lower frequency, perhaps. And there was one other thing. Really just making sure that we're affecting the future expansion perhaps of this data center, I think is one of the biggest things we need to make sure that this is addressed in our policies.
1 second. All right, I want to add some information for staff. Are you ready? On the first page of the specific use permit, zoning and limited use, possible standards and conditions to consider in development data center land use regulations. Number 7, under the limited use permitting data centers and limited use standards, it reads, less than or equal to 65 dBA nighttime at property line or equivalent to existing noise levels at the time of construction as verified by a pre-development noise study. I would like for you to expand on the DBD. I don't know how you're going to do that. I'm not a special acoustic person. All the way to the DBZs, whatever they are. Those are noises that we cannot hear, but we may feel. Those are noises that have a negative impact and also are attributed to EMFs. So I would like to expand that. I need more information to expand that. So that would go under 12 on that same page, a study prepared by a qualified acoustic consultant that models full facility build out, maximum summer cooling conditions, all cooling equipment operating simultaneously, transfer noise, generator testing, rooftop equipment, tonal and low frequency characteristics, topography and reflective building surfaces. So somewhere in that tonal and low frequency characteristics, I need the property to have some kind of qualifier of what that DVD can be. I don't know what it could, imagine what it could be, but it needs to be qualified. And then in all of the language that's written about these particular items, not them exclusively, but specifically for me, I'm going to be looking for how you are going to enforce it. So if you go to the very next page of that, number 30 starts out the words shall comply with all applicable federal pretreatment regulations, TCEQ requirements in the city's industrial wastewater discharge ordinance. Comply with 40 CFR Part 403 General Pretreating Regulation. I want to know who inspects it, how often it's inspected. We have to have those rules, correct? Mr. Reed, do you know? Or is these 403, this 40 CFR Part 403 General Pretreatment Regulations, is that a TCEQ regulation?
I'll let Rick Vasquez speak on that, Mayor.
Mayor,
Thank you.
it's not a one size fits all situation. There's thresholds for federal monitoring and compliance, there's state, and then there's the local water district. But the primary source will be the local water district to do most of the monitoring.
Okay, well, I have not gotten any notification back about the inspection of my fire hydrants that are in that water purveyor's jurisdiction. And so I need a time. I need once a quarter, twice a year written into this regulation to say from either state inspection, whatever the state inspection is, I'm sure there's a qualifier to it. Okay, and then the legislation needs to say must be made available to the city, and then what if they don't?
And as we draft the regulations, we do have to remember that we do have one power company and one set of regulations that we want to design your regulations to work in tandem with your electric provider. But we have two water utilities. And so when you talk about enforcement, the city of Cibolo will have to also augment its capabilities to be able to enforce those regulations that you adopt related to water quality monitoring as well.
And
So it
that's
won't just be GV Sud, it would be the city of Cibolo as well.
And that's exactly why I'm bringing this up. We need to know who's supposed to inspect it, how often they're supposed to inspect it, who's going to enforce it, because it doesn't make me feel good when I read words like shall comply, because I've seen what that looks like sometimes. So we need to have shall comply and then a descriptor of what that looks like. Thank you. The same on the next page, draft definitions related to the regulation of data centers. Under attenuation, which is section 1.12 of the Unified Development Code Data Center Related Proposal. This data center attenuation, these are like definitions, right? So vibration attenuation is I'm sorry, I'm kind of old and it's dark up here. Reduction of mechanical vibration transmitted from equipment through a building, structure, foundation, soil, other physical medium. It can be achieved through vibration isolators, spring mounts, electromeric, all these things that it reads. Okay, I wanted to read it into the record, but I need to have a way to determine that. We determine vibration attenuation by, I'm not a noise acoustic person, so I'm gonna want some clarifying definitions about how we do noise and vibration attenuation on a set of like physics tools or something. And then also again, what will happen if they violate that? Pretty much I mean, I think you guys have done a very good job and I do deeply appreciate the amount of effort that you have put into this. We have a hard gavel out at 9:45. Does anybody have any questions?
Ooh, I do really fast too. Sorry, just something I was thinking about when I was listening to everyone and going through this. And one of the questions tonight was asking like identified end user. Is that something we can add into our regulations that if they're doing this, that needs to be identified?
Mrs. Patterson, some of these developers have NDAs with who they're providing it for. I'm not sure, and our attorney is here, how we can force a developer to disclose the end user. And I'll talk about non-data centers. That happens with other developments in which the end user wants anonymity until they are ready to make that public announcement.
I thought they had posted that who sold it. Like they did their own posting. They didn't do a posting through our EDC. I want to make that very clear. Our EDC did not know. They just fired off. So, Councilwoman Steve.
Yes, I actually have this question because our representative from our law firm is here, and I forget her name, but she's down there. My question is something that I had asked you earlier, and I think this is something that's beneficial to the public just as well, because so many residents came up and said to stop it and to make sure that the data center doesn't come in. And they referenced multiple times what happened in San Marcos about banning the data center. So I would like for you to probably answer, how is it that San Marcos can ban it, and what are the legal consequences, or what are the consequences if this particular data center followed every ministerial, or our staff followed every ministerial thing and the data center applicant filed everything? Legally, what are those consequences? What actions can be taken? And also, if let's say there's a monetary legal consequence, does that come out of our general fund? or does that come out of a risk pool insurance?
Okay, so that was a series of questions, and I'll try and answer them as best I can. In accordance with, I want to reiterate some of what Wayne said earlier, that some of these projects, when they come through, they end up being, once they're approved and they're going through the process and they've submitted their appropriate permits in accordance with the ordinances that are in existence at that time, a lot of the permit processes do become very ministerial and almost bureaucratic, and that they must be checkboxed. That is what Wayne mentioned about the like the plat, for example. So long as the plat complies with all of the appropriate standards in your ordinances, the statute requires it to be approved. You can get in trouble for not appropriately delineating what reason you are denying it, and it has to be specifically tied to your ordinances. Insofar as the ability to ban, every city's ability to address things from a broad standpoint is that people do have cities do have the authority to ban, which is where you have seen cities do such to do that. However, cities are in different positions based on what developments are already in process. I can't speak to the cities that have banned those. I don't know if they had any currently in the pipe and how those were impacted. But cities broadly have the authority to prohibit some things to the extent possible in their city limits. However, as staff has mentioned, and Wayne mentioned several times, that it does end up pushing things to your ETJ, and when things go to your ETJ, you become very limited in the tools that you have to address them, which often result in where you have the most control is through development agreements, which functionally provide the regulatory authority that you would have were ordinances and zoning to be put into place. From a broad liability risk standpoint, any choice that can be made is often not fraught with risk, but has a level of risk that must be evaluated by each body to determine what level of risk they're comfortable with. What I would presume is that when someone comes and says they want to prohibit a complete use, data centers or something else, that does come with an immense legal risk because of the challenge of the rights that corporations have and that business has. And so banning them has a legal risk. Scaling them in such a way as the city is proposing has risk, but it has much less risk because it is operating within more clearly defined boundaries of what is established authority for the city. Whereas something such as a full-scale prohibition is really uncharted territory. And so a lot of those discussions become down to what do you currently have in the pipeline? How can that be impacted? And then what level of risk the city is comfortable with accepting and what cost benefit that has. And then to the final point, the question about the risk pool, many suits will come from general fund, but for it being a damages claim. But typically when the risk pool is involved, it's when the city has been sued for damages. And so in the event that the city was sued for some that I won't pick a number for, it is possible that depending on what is being claimed, the risk pool could cover it. But there also is because we are in a brave new world, we don't necessarily know what that could look like. And so it could result in the brunt of or all of the litigation cost being borne by the city, and that does also the risk of that also is accounted for in what courts are looking at and how courts are likely to rule. And we have a very pro-business Supreme Court, and so that is absolutely something that's factored into when litigators become involved to decide or advise on what level of risk?
Daisy,
exists?
we have a hard gavel out at 9:45. We're 1 minute past. I need council to do one thing before we adjourn. So that question, ma'am, will probably be asked at the next meeting. I want city council to give me an aye if they agree that we should have the CMO's office set up a joint meeting between city council, planning and zoning, the Economic Development Corporation, and our UDC to sit down with this regulation and write and kind of solidify it all together as a team so that we can then push it to planning and zoning and bring it up. Even if we do 100% sub or 100% cut, or we do a full ban, I still want the language that limits and it crunches down on. I want the work done so that they don't catch us flat-footed again. We have the regulations in place, even if we put a ban or a sub or whatever the body chooses to do. We need to have good beginning chunks of law in place. So I'm going to go down the line, starting with Council McLaughlin. Do you agree to give that direction to staff?
Yes, I would also like to make a recommendation, maybe on a separate line item, that we invite the developer of the current data center to see if they would be willing to make or consider, not that they have to, but if there could be any consideration of modifications to their current development, that it's good to just have that conversation to see what they would be willing to do and bring them forth to the table, and so that the rest of council and the rest of the committee understands better what this development was intended to look like.
I hate cutting you guys off like this, but we have a hard gavel out. Ms. Brown?
Since we have a hard, I won't add my comment. I'll email it, but I.
Please email it.
Same, I will email my comment, but
Thank you. I would now go to 5, adjournment. Do I have a motion?